Hi, guys. Welcome to season 2 of Influence to Equity. It's just me today. And I guess if I'm going to have a podcast, I need to be a little less private. So this episode is going to be all about me.
So who is Sara Lovestyle?
Oh, goodness. Sara Lovestyle is a mother. She is smart and kind, compassionate, which is why the entire brand was built. My son is nonverbal autistic. And so in that process, I needed to learn how to find my voice in order to advocate for my son. And while doing so, I found mine. I found the beauty in the things that I wanted to say. I found beauty in showcasing my personality and not being shy and quiet and not needing to fit inside the room, but it was okay to break outside of the box. And if I could be quite honest, autism taught me that, and my son taught me that.
And Sara Lovestyle, what do you do?
I'm an angel investor. I am in venture capital. I'm an influencer. I'm a content creator, and an all-around boss because I said so.
You do a lot.
do.
How did you get into the VC world?
So what's interesting is 4 years ago, and almost to the day, 4 years ago, I decided that I would give myself a 2-year deadline to be an influencer and see if I could do anything with it. Did anyone care about what I had to say, and was it going to be impactful? And a lot of times the linear path for influencers is you do brand partnerships, you do sponsorships. And I made a joke to a brand one day about knowing that they couldn't pay me. And I said, well, if you give me equity in your company, would you consider working with me? Could we still have this partnership? And they said, actually, we would. And that company later went on to exit, which then made me realize that I did not have to take the normal path. Then I went into angel investing in tech and CPG, which is consumer product goods. And it turns out I'm really effing good at what I do. And then I went on to go into venture capital to see if I could play with the big boys.
Okay, so tell me about your journey through the world of VC.
I think a lot of it begins with actually angel investing. My first tech company, my first investment was an accidental butt dial. They had reached out to, or a mutual friend had reached out to ask me about being an influencer for a company. And in my mind, I was like, I know that they can't afford to pay me. And also I was going through a lot personally. So it's interesting simultaneously going through the worst time of my life personally and then watching my career kind of in Sara Lovestyle, the brand expanding. And I'm so glad that my intuition and I have the discernment to know when God is speaking or to know when I need to listen to what's out there. And so I finally took that accidental butt dial, and turns out that was the first investment, which is Moon Ultralight with Ed, who is now one of my business partners and best friends. And in the process, I realized I really loved the tech world and the investment world. And honestly, it's quite addicting. And so I went on from 1 and then added, 5, 10, 20. And then with venture capital, with Malcolm Jenkins starting Broad Street Ventures, it was important to me, one, because he had a female partner, which is Rolanda, and she's incredible. And for him, the thought process was, especially coming after George Floyd being murdered, was how do we create more wealth in our communities? How do we cycle the money back? How do we build the way that other folks in other communities are doing, and make sure that we have the opportunities to be a part of the deals where typically it's not that we don't have the money in our communities, it's just that we don't even know that these deals exist. And so I'm grateful that Malcolm and Rolanda gave me the A-OK to invest with a bunch of pro athletes and giving me the opportunity to be a part of deals that, again, typically would not be ever come my way.
Tell me about your podcast and why you started it.
What's interesting is anyone who knows me knows I never intended on starting a podcast. I said that I would never do it. And the podcast I knew was a calling, and it was a necessity because my journey to where I am now, and success is, it's subjective, right? And so, like, for me, I haven't made it yet, but there are so many things that I wish I would have known early in my career, or opportunities that I wish were available. And the line, because it's not linear as a influencer to how I got here, or in the previous season, we had Tuala Mai Austin, who was a volunteer for the Magic Johnson Foundation 20-something odd years ago, and now she's the global EVP over at Sony. We have Emmanuel Acho from the last season as well, where he started off as a pro athlete, things took a turn, injuries, life happens. He goes on to do media. Again, George Floyd is murdered, and he decides he's going to sit in a white room and talk about uncomfortable conversations with a Black man. And that then catapults his career into a different direction. So, and even with Jimmy Spencer, and, there's so many times where we think there's only one way. I do not have a finance degree. I do not come from the financial world. I don't have, media training, and yet here I am. And so my hope is to inspire folks from all walks of life that whether you're in corporate or you want to be an entrepreneur, and please understand this podcast is not to tell you that you need to be an entrepreneur, because it's not for everyone. This shit is hard and it's fine, but you can find your lane of success with your influence regardless of where you are in your career.
Talk about the name and why you named it.
Influence to equity. I took my influence and I took it to equity. And whether, we're watching it now, whether you're in church, if you have one person who's following you, you're an influencer, congratulations. If you are working at the grocery store, you're meeting people every single day. You are a person of influence, regardless of where you are. If you are a teacher, you have some of the most powerful influence, and that's children and their parents. And so my hope is that you can take your influence and turn it into equity and turn it into whatever that measure of success looks like for you.
How would you say your friends describe you?
Which ones?
Whichever ones that you want to tell us about.
The folks that truly, truly know me know that I'm goofy, I'm funny. I love to dance. I love to have a good time, but I'm also very introverted and shy and quiet. And if I'm not comfortable in most spaces or in some spaces, then I won't even talk at all. You won't even realize I'm there.
What is your message to women trying to get into the space that you are in, knowing how much of a male-dominated field it is?
There is space for you. And the reality is that most Fortune 500 companies, or most companies in general that are very successful, have a woman in leadership somewhere. And your knowledge matters, your opinion matters, your thoughts matter. What I found really interesting, and one of the reasons why I almost didn't go into VC and didn't go into angel investing heavily, is I thought, what would my contribution be? And I remember after I made the first investment in Moon, and I actually had this conversation with Ed probably about 3 months in, and I said, I wish I knew how to help you more. I don't want to just be a quiet, silent investor. I want to make an impact that is meaningful and measurable inside of your company beyond just like, here's a check. And he says to me, Sara, and he goes down my resume and he's like, this is what you do well. And this is no offense to the men. You guys have the guts and the permission within yourselves and with each other to like fake it till you make it, or like build the plane as you're flying. And as women, we don't have that. We think we have to know everything. And you don't. Take the skill sets you already have and be really damn good at that and excel. And then you just learn along the way, and then you just learn the process. But I remember I thought I have no contributions and I have nothing to give in especially the tech space, because I don't come from that world. Turns out my influence was enough. Turns out they know what they're doing well, and they can invent and they can ideate and they can create, but I can execute. And actually influence and being creative actually taught me that I could be a COO and CEO of startups, because you have to be so intuitive, and there's a structure to being creative in a certain way. And I realized that in a way, influence taught me how to be the CEO of my own company. And so then I could then take that and move it over to angel investing in VC.
What would you say your superpower is?
My intuition. My intuition. I know. And regardless of what people's faith is, for me, I'm a Christian. And so my intuition is exceptional, but it's also why I do not take credit for the work that I'm doing. And I know that there's a higher power, because there's no way I park in the wrong spot illegally, and 30 minutes later, I'm now the interim CEO of this man's company. There's no way that a butt dial should lead me to the first CPG tech company that I invest in. There's no way. I talk a lot about this with my manager and my friends, where even the way, and I talk about it in the first season with Emmanuel, there's no way that sending a car to E, that one conversation, that one moment should lead to all the work that we've done now. And so I have another friend who got in an Uber ride and met us at Soho House. He doesn't get in the car that day. We don't meet him. I don't get that phone call. We don't invest in his company. And now he's doing incredible, exceptional work. Same thing with my assistant. I met her on set, on accident, doing background work for a movie. And here we are years later. So my intuition, I would say, is my superpower.
And lastly, who is this podcast for?
It's for everyone. But one group that I want to make sure that I mention as well is for my mamas. I don't talk about this often, but when I started Sara Lovestyle, I was a stay-at-home mom of 2. And I was scared. And why would anyone care about what I had to say or what I was going to show or how? There's no way I could have ever imagined 4 years ago that while going through a divorce, becoming a single mom, and all of a sudden going to fight or flight and being in survival, I could not have imagined that this is where my career would be now. And so I want to make sure that moms, you have influence at home. You have influence over your children. If you are in corporate, and regardless of where you're starting, I know someone in particular who started as an admin assistant, and she is now taken those skill sets that she learned from her corporate job and is now turned it into a multi-million-dollar company. There are so many opportunities within the spaces that you're at right now with the skill sets that you've got, regardless of where you are in your career or in your life, that you can turn into equity, and you can turn into business opportunities for yourself and for your family. I hope you learned a little bit about me. Let me just say that I am so excited for season 2 of Influence to Equity. I have an amazing lineup of guests, and hopefully that will inspire you along the way.